Hi, welcome to Science Fiction Fantasy video lecture number 6. This one is on counterclaims, and many of you probably haven't thought much about counterclaims yet because you've still been in the drafting process on these critical lens with research, these papers. But it is time to start to think about what would the other side have to say. Why would we include a counterclaim? Well, if you remember back at the beginning of the semester, we did a really quick assessment over 2 days where you wrote an essay about the time of day that school starts and teens and the need for sleep. And if you remember, that rubric had a section for counterclaims. And we're using that same rubric, so it's important to remember that. And most people haven't done much work with counterclaims. They are good to include in any type of argument writing because it allows you to think about the other side of the question and if there would be potentially opponents to whatever your perspective is, to take that into consideration. Ultimately, it will strengthen your argument too if you show that you've thought about the other side and you already know how to respond to the objections. So before you can start to think about counterclaims, you definitely need to know what your own argument is. Now, for many of you, this is going to be somewhat similar because you have been asked to write a critical lens type of paper. So you are analyzing Fellowship of the Ring through an archetypal lens or historical lens, and then what does that reveal? Analyzing this particular book through this lens reveals this. So it's a very similar claim or thesis for all of you. If you're not sure about some of this terminology, you should go back to the video number 5, and that one was about argument, so you can see some of the steps of logical order. So your argument is your thesis statement. If you can't identify it in your first paragraph in your introduction, you probably don't have one. And if you're floundering and feeling like you don't know where you're going, it's likely you're not sure what your argument is. So you need to go back and take a close look at that. So then once you've determined this, you can start to think, well, what would opponents say? Now this is kind of strange for this particular essay because you might not think, well, who are the opponents? Remember, you learned something about some other types of lenses. You probably can imagine that some people would be against analyzing a particular work of literature in this particular fashion. So you can think of those opponents would be the people who would say this is just an exercise in some kind of silliness, like just enjoy the book for what it is. So go back and look at all the different critical lenses that were on one of those sheets that were given to you, that's in your notebook, and think about what lens would be the opposite of archetypal or opposite of historical. And then you can create a paragraph that treats the counterclaim with a little bit of detail. This is kind of a new concept, this whole counterclaim, so just try to put that in probably the last body paragraph of your paper just before your conclusion, that you've given it some thought, that you're trying to put it in. You may not be an expert yet, and that is okay. So give it a try, see what you can do with it. The last part of a counterclaim is how you refute it. Does using the archetypal lens or the historical lens give you a new perspective? And that would be your claim for why bother with this exercise. Resources, there's lots of them all over the internet. One of my favorites is the OWL Purdue website. You can enter these terms into Google and you'll get exactly what I was looking at earlier. And I think I've also already put this on the new school website on my staff page. And I will put a link here too so that you can access it from YouTube. And this is a great site for all kinds of writing questions. So if you're not sure how to do the MLA headers, you don't know how to do that or know where the page number goes, because yes, there should be a page number. You're not sure about the title. How do you treat book titles? They should be italicized. You know, lots of different writing questions. So pay attention to your own resources. There's so much information available, and try to see if you can solve your problems. And then if you're still a little stuck, ask Mr. McKenna or myself for some help And of course, you could stay after school too. We're holding after school help sessions this week. So I hope this was helpful, and let us know if there's something else that you could benefit from, maybe a different video lecture, and I'll be talking to you in school. Thanks.